All right, here we go.
Oh, okay, fantastic.
All right, we're going to go ahead. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. All right, thank you so much for joining us today and coming out to this mastermind conversation. Today promises to be a very insightful time and valuable discussion. And my name is Chris Parks. For those of you who haven't met me before, I think I know most of everybody in the room. And I'm a loan officer. I spend most of my day juggling numbers. That's why I don't look like I belong here, because I juggle numbers and I push paper, and every now and then I have a joke that might be of value. But for the most part, that's kind of the role of what I play. I'm thrilled to serve you today as your humble guide as we're going through this conversation, because there's been a topic that has kind of been a bomb in the industry for a couple months now, which is all about the compensation that's going on. And so let's be honest, I mean, this whole conversation kind of feels like it's been like just about the time you're getting ready to score, they move the goalposts. Anybody feel like that? It's been a little bit like that. So today we're going to spend some time working through this, because as partners in this, we really need to kind of work together. We need to adapt and strategize and support each other. And my role today is really going to be a little different, because I'm in the mortgage world. So I did organize this to kind of help the conversation and get everybody going here. But my role is more of a support at this point, and to be your steady partner to help you navigate. And that's why I got these guys here that I call friends to come and help with the conversation. And they're going to give us some clarity. They're going to navigate, and then they're going to share the stage with these exceptional guys, and they're going to share their unique perspective, their knowledge on what we're doing. And they're going to try to help us understand the complexities of what happened and how to fix it. Okay, how to have the conversations. And so, but before we dive in, we aren't just going to be sharing knowledge, even though that's extremely important, right? Knowing the knowledge of what we're trying to get here. But everybody in this room now has a partner that they can lean on, that you guys can kind of lean on, and that you can strengthen partnerships, and you can get out of the people pile. Do you guys know what the people pile is? That's how you differentiate yourself, because there's a lot of people in this pile, and you're going to have to differentiate yourself in this new market to be able to secure your business, secure your spot in your piece of the pie. Okay, and it's going to take more than just a network of professionals, but we need a team that's going to thrive on collaboration and shared success. And that's really what we're trying to put together today. The guys up here at the top, they produce at a very high level. And so I'm going to go ahead and talk to them, because they are trusted partners in helping with this. Most of them here run their own brokerage or large teams. And so they're going to be fantastic when it comes into this. So I'm going to introduce them. First of all, Todd, who's right here in the middle. Todd is our host. He provided us with this space here today. And he's the one that is, he's been in real estate for 20 years. 22 years. Okay, so I rounded down. Let's round up. Okay.
You know, in real estate, you have to round up.
25 years. 25. That's what we do in mortgages. We round up, right? Your debt to income is 25% now. And he's been a great real estate partner with so many clients. In fact, you see yourself as a client advocate based on what I've seen you say. But he does more than that. You'll see in his showroom that he's got renovation tools to help with renovations. And you do quite a few renovations from what I understand. He runs his own brokerage, and I understand that he was a caterer and a cook. Is that right?
Nice. Kind of still.
Wow. Okay.
You gonna leave any?
So this is hard. Okay. The next one is Angel. He's sitting right beside him. Okay. He's a retired lieutenant colonel. I usually leave lieutenant out to see how he responds. But he's lieutenant colonel, retired lieutenant colonel from the Army. And he's been in real estate for over 10 years. We're going to round up to 20 now. And with this, he also has the heart of a teacher. I've actually taught many classes beside Angel. And not just real estate. You do more than just real estate classes as well, like financial literacy and other things like that. So he really has a desire to make sure that his clients know what they're getting into, how they're going to get there, and how they're going to improve their lives with the success. And then Danny, 18 years as a realtor, BCU Ram, is that right?
Yes,
Did I read your profile right?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Got my degree in finger painting.
There you go. And he grew into the greatest industry in the world, which is real estate. Been doing that and doing investing too, right?
Yep.
And then you like to cook, travel, and one of the things is he likes friendships. Okay, so if you get on the phone with him, you'll feel like you've known him for 100 years. Just to let you know that. So, and I'll give you his phone number so you can try it.
Down.
And then John, last but not least, John Tiller over here. I think John was born into real estate. I think he came out of the womb with a business card and a for sale sign. Am I right?
Yeah, we're basically rounding up to 50.
Okay. And he ran one of the largest real estate teams in the Richmond area for a long time, and has since gone out and started his own team, F4 Realty. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, F4. But more than that, he actually started. If you haven't listened to this, you might want to go look it up. He actually started a podcast for the mega agents and also does some coaching for mega agents at the same point in time. So we have some fantastic experts here. We're really going to share what they've done. They've gotten the t-shirt, they've come back, and now they're going to share how to get the t-shirt too. Okay, is that right? Okay. Now, real quick note, this is the fine print. Are you ready for the fine print? If you want to talk percentage points or you want to talk actual numbers on this, you really need to talk to your broker. Okay, we're going to be talking about other things that relate to compensation, but for the most part, we're really going to be spending some time in some heavy discussion that is not going to include 3%, 2%, whatever percentage points like that. It's going to be other thing along those lines. So if you have something very specific that you want to talk compensation-wise, you may need to talk to your broker about it. But today's conversation is going to be a lot about mindset and a lot about how to help you be successful in 25. Now, we are recording this just mainly so they know who to send to jail when we're done here. So if that's the case, there's a small microphone that's going to help them get to be a part of this conversation in here. And I'm going to actually start with a question for Angel. So I'll let you hold the massive microphone here and speak into it.
No problem.
And starting off with the first question, which is, as a buyer representative, how should I approach the topic of my compensation?
Yeah, so thanks a lot, Chris, for hosting this and providing your office space here. So that is extremely important. That's going to be number one step into your relationship with your buyers. When your buyers approach you, the number one thing that you really need to do, everybody wants to talk about, just like a listing is about money. How is the agent paid? Number one, you want to make sure that representative is, number one, qualified to purchase a property, whether it's via cash or a loan. There's no other way to purchase a house but those two processes. So we're discussing compensation, as you guys know, with the new buyer's form that we're filling out, buyer's brokerage form. It's one of the top topics that you're going to be talking about with your client. And before you even have that client sign that agreement, that you need to let them know exactly how you are paid and what services you're going to be providing that person and the reason that you're getting paid, whether it's 1 apple, 2 apples, 3 apples, whatever you decide to compensate yourself via the work that you do for that client. So it's important to let them know the responsibility that they have on the brokerage form, that they are responsible for your brokerage fee and not the seller, not the other agents representing the seller, just strictly you. So you really need to let them know what is it that you're doing for your compensation, why is it you're going to be owed XYZ for your services that you're providing. And then working in cahoots, or not cahoots, working in conjunction with the lender, they need to be able to show you the money. Some of these buyers don't want to share their finances with you, but I think it's extremely important. I always ask my clients when they come as buyers, say, hey, exactly how much money do you have in the bank? Because it's going to be the driving force behind what your compensation is going to be, because how are you able to get paid? What if a client comes to you with $5,000 in the account and your fee is a certain percentage? That buyer's got to be prepared to pay your compensation. The other thing we talk about is that if that buyer does not have the means to be able to pay you, then you talk about other ways that you could be compensated, which is asking the seller to pay that fee. And so you really have to break down the numbers, and you really have to be working hand in hand with that lender, whoever it is that lender is, that representative lender, to run numbers.
And I think that's a great point. And any of you guys want to build off of what he was saying?
I think that in the past, we used to look to each other to ask the question, how much is the buyer agency compensation? But we don't ask that question anymore. We know how much our buyers have agreed to pay us. And then we tell them, you can pay us, or there's other ways that I can get paid. And one of the ways is to ask the seller to pay it through the purchase agreement. But we don't call each other and ask, how much are you paying me? So we're not sharing it from broker to broker.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay. So there's some pieces with this that are probably worth talking about, because as you're getting into this conversation piece with your buyer, you kind of need to make sure that the whole team is on the same page as far as how this compensation is going to work. And the conversation with the lender, many times, you brought that up, Angel, plays a huge role in this, because if the lender is not running numbers with them being pre-approved with them having to pay some form, that really can create problems. Have you run into that problem before with any of that?
I have run into that problem, because if you run the numbers, it's great. Working with Chris, I've had several deals with Chris, with clients. And what I like about Chris's work, and I'm not advertising for Chris, I'm just saying what he does for his clients, is he gives you a breakdown. If the seller participates in the compensation for the buyer fee, and if not, this is what you'll pay, or if they pay some compensation. So it's really important that's why it's important that you know what their savings are, what they're able to pay out, because if it's a buyer's market or if it's a seller's market, it's going to differentiate how much closing costs that property is going to be, that seller's going to be able to bring in. So that maybe if it's a competitive property, there's also a lot of factors into what you're being compensated. So you really need to make sure that buyer is prepared for that fee, and you have to make it crystal clear. There won't be any surprises 30 days later when it comes time to close.
So that's a great point, because I've actually had that happen to buyers, unfortunately, in the early days of this, that it wasn't explained correctly how it was going, even though we did share with them what was happening. And they got a $15,000 surprise. It was not a very good one. And I'm going to let you know that surprise really caused some anxiety at closing. And let's just put it this way: that poor agent is not getting any referrals out of how this is going to work. And that's really the point of what we're trying to do, is when we're building these relationships with people, is to turn it. I want to build off that question, but I want to ask Danny to start off with on this one, is what do you need to do? We've talked kind of briefly about, how to have this approach in this compensation conversation. Build up for us a value proposition that would make it easy for that question to be answered.
Okay, so when I'm starting out with a buyer, I'm going to sit them down and we're going to do a buyer intake. And I'm literally going to go through all of the services I offer. I'm also going to go through timeframes and expectations. Yes, you want to know that they have money in the bank, but when you're getting your buyer's brokerage agreement signed, you're going to show them the percentage. You're going to tell them, hey, look, you're going to pay if the seller doesn't, but it is customary that the seller pays, and that's very likely. And you're also going to reassure them that they will, if the compensation isn't paid, that they'll know ahead of time, right? And then we'll have the discussion and it will be reflected in the offer. And what I mean by that is we might ask for closing costs. We might raise the sales price to get that. And you're going to be talking to your lender. I agree with that part completely. But I mean, that's really the approach. But you really want to spell out all of the activities that you're doing. They don't know what a realtor does. They have no idea that we are, going and finding this house and talking to agents to find things off market. They have no idea that we are, really, really doing more than just opening a door for them, because that's all they see, right?
So well, the perception, can I build off that for a second?
Yeah, sure.
So the perception is, and I get this a lot from the buyers that come to me, is they're like, well, I found the house on Zillow. What is they really doing? Why should I pay them $15,000 for this work? Build off of that.
Well, and that's part of that expectation. This is a partnership, right? How many buyers do we work with at a time, right? So we are looking every single day for them. They're only looking for themselves. So when they get up at 5 a.m. or stay up till midnight looking at houses and they find the one they like, that's fantastic. But we help them narrow it down. We help them determine what was important to them. We help them determine what they could afford as far as that, and also kind of looking at the whole picture. And then once they've said, hey, I like 123 Main Street, we got to go get it for them, right? It's not just open the door and not like we're going to write an offer. I mean, you have to show them all of the different places that we negotiate in a contract, right? It's not just price. It's closing dates, it's conditions, it's inspection. Normally when I meet with a buyer, I say, it's price, location, condition. You can have two of those, right? If you want it to be really good condition and in a great location, then the price is going to be more. So you kind of break that down and explain it to them and kind of hold their hand through to get to where we need to go. But if you're explaining your value, I just had one where in order to get the deal done, they went to cut the compensation and my client was like, no, you're worth it. You will get your money done.
So I want to build off of that because that's not the norm. Just so, does anybody feel that way? That's not necessarily the norm. So why don't you tell us like some of the dialogues and some of the pieces that you did behind the scenes to make them come to that conclusion?
You have to put their needs ahead of yours. That's like the classic conversation we'll see online. They got a 3% interest rate. Why would they move? Well, they'd move because they had a baby. Somebody died. They got married. That's why they're going to move. But we're doing it because it's what's best for them and not what's best for us. And if we display that through our actions and our activities, and they say, "Hey, look, I'm not sure about this one. Can I look at one more?" And you go, "Yeah, absolutely. You can look at one more." You know what I mean? And that sort of thing. Now, don't get me wrong. If they told you, "Hey, I don't like the ones with the little windows in the rooftop," you say, "Well, that's called a Cape Cod, and we won't be looking at any more of those, even if you send it to me, because you've told me you don't like that," right? You just have to do the work during the transaction. You can't wait. You have to set expectations and then do what you say you're going to do.
So I want to hear from John on following up with that same topic, because I know that we've worked with several clients and had to manage a few tough ones. So.
Sure. Just to reiterate some of the highlights, Danny, you're so right on so much of that. In the initial conversation, what we all forget to do is listen, right? And that's the differentiator between you and every other agent out there, is that you're asking questions when you start and finding out what it is that they really need, what it is that they really want. And if you make them feel heard in that initial part of your interview with them, they'll be your client forever if you pay attention to that, right? But then you get to where, hey, there's a shortage on the fee, and I think you got to figure out where you're most comfortable with the language. I don't talk about shortage on the fee in the buyer presentation because they don't care about shortage on the fee in the buyer presentation. What they care about is, what are you going to do for me? Well, what I'm going to do for you is I'm going to make sure you get the best deal on financing and get you pre-approved so you're in a powerful negotiation. You're in a powerful position to negotiate. I'm going to make sure that you get the best deal on a house, which includes off-market properties, including bank foreclosures. And then thirdly, I'm going to represent you through the process, because you may or may not know, Mr. Buyer, that seller, that listing agent whose name is on the sign, they're legally obligated to tell you the things that would make you want to pay the most amount of money for the home. So I'm going to represent you through the process, not only in the initial negotiation, but the inspection negotiation. If there's an appraisal negotiation, I'm going to make sure we get you all the way home into the home of your dreams, right? So you guys know that presentation, right? And then they're in, and then you're looking at homes. And then what's different in today's world, and can we all just I meet so many agents who are still asking, what's the fee you're offering as a listing agent? And guys, that ship has sailed. It's done. You might not agree with it. It's okay, but it's done. We're not going. The CVR MLS has adopted a best practice that the DOJ has been after for a very long time, which is listing brokers used to be able to offer compensation. And in today's world, listing brokers, it is not an accepted practice in our market. Is it technically, could you do it? That's a conversation you need to have with your broker. But what I can tell you is that even if you find a broker who's doing it, who technically might be able to, that's not the future of real estate. And it's not the now of real estate for most folks. So what we do is we say, hey, I'm going to write in my compensation in the offer, right? That's usually a step one. is I'm going to write my compensation in the offer. The buyer they don't blink at that, because what you're asking them is, what's the price? What's the closing date? What's the EMD? What's all the things, right? And you write in your fee, they sign it. And if they have a question about it, you say, yeah, that's just the fee that was on the first thing we're going to do is try to get the seller to pay for it. And let's assume that you think you can negotiate for the seller to pay for it. And then it comes back and it's short. So I just wanted to kind of set that in context, right, about what we're talking about. And so it comes back and the seller says, I'm only willing to pay 2/3 of whatever the buyer just asked for in the offer, right? Let's just say that that's what they say. And then I would just present that to the buyer and say, you might remember. So good news, we got a counter offer back from the seller, and here's the counter terms. They're willing to sell you the house. Here's the counter terms. It might involve a counter on price, and so we go through that. And then, hey, by the way, also they countered on my fee. My fee, as you might remember from when we initially talked, was X. And what they're willing to pay is 2/3 of X, right? And so how would you like me to proceed?
So I want to build off of that question, because that's the question that we hear quite a bit.
Yeah.
And you get to the point now at that point in the conversation, it's a little late, right? It's a little late in the game. If you haven't figured out from the pre-approval whether they have the cash or not, it's a little late. But let's just say we get to that point.
Yeah.
And let's say that they have the money, but like every good buyer, who wants to part with it, right?
Well, I think you skipped a step,
Okay.
just to be clear. So when I said, how would you like to proceed? Most buyers, if you did a good job, are going to do what Danny's buyers do.
Yep.
And they're going to say, well, you tell them they need to pay the fee, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, but you as a professional might know there's a competing offer coming. You might have an indication that there might be a problem with that. So then
now you have to figure out a way to, in essence, justify. You've already justified because you've done the work up front,
right?
But you're actually having to re-temper that conversation again.
Yeah, and I think I actually think all you're doing is you're addressing. Remember when we first talked, and I told you what my fee is. This seller's not willing to pay that fee. What are you willing? What would you like to do about that? Well, I'd like to have the seller pay it. Okay, so there's a risk that we might lose the house if we make the seller, if we ask the seller to pay for it, right? And so do you want to take that risk? Yes, I do. But then maybe I know that I know this because whatever the listing agent said, and I knew they weren't blowing smoke. They were a good agent, and I knew they weren't blowing smoke, and I knew that the seller had some whatever. I just knew it wasn't going to happen. And then I talk to Chris or whoever the lender is, and I say, hey, and again, you're going to know, right? If they're like well qualified, 1% is not if they're putting down 20% on a home, we're going to figure out how to get 1%. It's people who are putting low money down, who barely have cash. And we know that from the beginning. Chris, to your point, I want to know that when they're pre-approved, that this is going to be tight. And I'm making this decision in my mind. What am I willing to do? Because there's really only two options. There's doing everything they can do. And if they're willing to do everything they can do, there's only two options. There's you proceed with them or you step out. Those are the only two options, right? And so for me, for somebody who legitimately can't afford, I'm looking for other solutions with them if they legitimately can't afford. But there's lots of people who can afford to do it. And so really the option, I'm not bringing up discounting my fee. I'm bringing up, hey, would you like me to really press hard on this seller who we might lose the house if we do that? Or is there another way that you can come up with this money? And of course, I'm thinking, is the lender going to be able to approve? Well, my mom might have the money. Well, obviously, I got to talk to the lender, make sure that a gift is okay and all of that. I would say that in the experience of we have a couple of hundred agents at the brokerage that Danny and I work at, a few hundred agents locally at that brokerage. And I would say that 80 to 90% of them are not having an issue with that conversation. Now, of course, many of you do work like you specialize in first-time buyers with low down payments or grants. That's going to come up more often for you, but you're going to know that in the pre-approval, right? At the pre-approval stage. And again, that's when you decide when what you're going to say when this comes up. You decide that when you get the pre-approval letter. But when it comes up, then what you're saying is how would you like to proceed? Well, I can't get that money from anywhere, John. Well, then I have a business decision to make, right? And if I can absolutely say, hey, listen, that was my fee, and I'm gonna step out. But if I'm really a pro, I don't think that happens very often either, because I thought about that at pre-approval, right? Like, you're going to know that this scenario can come up. So you're generally going to have a solution that you should have a solution in your mind worked out about what you're willing to discount for. If I ever discount, my personal opinion is that what I do is I say, hey, listen, I'm willing to take that hit. I understand you can't get the money anywhere else. Chris can't get it for, even if we raise the price, there's all the strategies around getting it. But at the end of the day, if you just can't get it, hey, I understand that we can't get it. Could you do half? And again, it's a step down approach. It's a negotiation with them, right? It turns into but not an adversarial negotiation. It's just your fee. Like, this is what we're on the same team, buyer. This is what we're doing this together. I want you to get the house. I'm not going to stand in the way of you getting the house. So could you make up half the difference? Well, no, you really can't. Or maybe I know already that they really can't. But I'll still ask them. And then I'm just trading on referrals. How many of you would take a buyer who is seriously committed to you, to sending you 2 more referrals this year of qualified buyers? Like, most of us would do that, right? Like, and most of us would do, if you were right, exactly. If you were going to, if they can't do it, it's another thing if they won't do it. If they won't do it, I might decide I'm just going to back out. I'm going to be like, hey, okay, I can't help you from here. I just can't help you from here. And if you buy that, by the way, if you buy that house, you still owe me that fee. Like, you could say that, right? But we don't, I'm not sure how much I recommend that. But it's just a business decision on your part from that point.
So, Todd, I saw you shaking your head a couple times, acknowledging some of the stuff you were saying. Why don't you go ahead and build off it? I think you got some more juice in that.
Yeah, a couple things. Danny was saying, somebody will send you a house. I found this on Zillow. Well, finding the house, I think most people here will agree, that's the easy part.
That's this much. Right.
The work begins after that.
Yep.
So I think one of the first conversations is important to have with our buyers is to make them understand that they're hiring us to do that hard part that they can't do. They can't sit at home in their bed and figure out, well, how much is the house worth? Where's this neighborhood going? What kind of inspections am I going to have to do? What contingencies are on the line? A lot of them they have questions about being able to get a financing. So that's, as long as your buyer understands they're hiring you for all this hard work. This hard work is we do because we've done it for a long time, and we are serious about it, and we learn.
I mean, I got to tell you, that value proposition you just shared is the one that I'm not hearing from, especially a lot of the agents that are not necessarily producing at a high level right now. So go ahead and develop that.
So one of the things I hope doesn't happen is agents that don't see their own self-worth. And the easy solution to what John was just talking about is, buyer asks the seller to pay their agent's compensation. Seller says no, and then buyer agents I'll just discount it. I don't want that to be a new normal, because that's one of the things we're talking about is, what has the normal been? Normal isn't normal anymore. We have a new normal. So I think we have to kind of stand fast. And I agreed, if I have an agent and he just can't come up with the money, or he or she can't come up with the money, that's different than they don't want to. And if they're going to bring me more clients and love me till the end of time, then that's a time when I would consider doing that.
Can I jump on that?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna be honest. Even if they pay me, that's my expectation. I'm going to do such a good job that they're going to want to send stuff back, right?
Perfect.
Right.
Yes.
That's what we're shooting for. If they can't, you do have a decision to make. Absolutely. But there are a lot of strategies before we get to that.
Yes.
Can we raise the sales price and ask for more concessions, to do that? Can we?
Can the home appraise for more?
Right. And that'll come down to one of the things that the agent is able to do, right? Like, we're supposed to know what the values are and where we think that appraisal will come in and whether that strategy would work. but that's a lot of what you're doing. The other thing that I really press upon my people at the buyer intake, and usually everybody comes to me through referral. That's just how I work. I don't run ads. That's just me and my business system. So I will lean and say, hey, look, Sally recommended you to me because of X, Y, and Z. And that's why we are where we are. And you can prove that value. The other thing that I press upon my clients is I'm not going anywhere. We're not going to close this deal and I'm never going to call you again. Like I have to do so, again, you press upon them that if you're unhappy with this house in a year, I'm going to hear all about it. And that's counterproductive to myself, right? Like if I don't do a good job, I'm not getting any more business, right? Especially if you build it that way. And I guess where I was going with that is just so many strategies before we're either walking away from a client or that. And to all of these guys' point, if they can't do it, they can't do it. And you got to do what you got to do, right? But if you really cared about that client, you're going to do it.
Yeah, we're pretty clever problem solvers.
Yeah, and really honestly, if you can communicate that's my value. I fix problems.
Can that be communicated in the beginning of the consult?
Yes.
If I'm understanding you correctly, it's not. So for me, I would think when I'm sitting down and it's just not an emotional decision, it's like there may be a time when we will come across in our negotiations that my fee will not be met. So therefore, how would you guys like to handle that? So we discuss it now so that when it happens, I already know they're going to mom. They may say right there at the consult, well, is there anything you can do, Donna, that would, and generally, we go down that road, and that's usually a conversation we have in the beginning, so you set them up for success. Because that's kind of scary if I'm not setting them up good, and then all of a sudden there's being sucker punched with leads.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd have to
So
do that.
you have to do what you're comfortable with, and it'll come across perfectly because it's what you are comfortable with. For me, I don't know if the seller's going to offer 80 when I'm at the buyer presentation. I don't know if the seller's going to offer 80% of my fee. I don't know if they're going to offer 0% of my fee. And there are different solutions to those problems, which is why I choose not to bring it up. But you can absolutely, if you're confident in bringing it up and that buyer still signs that agreement when you're bringing it up, you ought to bring it up. It's totally up to you. But just remember that price in the absence, I think what we're trying to communicate is make sure that you communicate your value before you communicate price, because price in the absence of value is just cost, right?
Yeah. I just want to share with everybody that it is important. That's why the lender is so important in this factor, because they're going to be able to give them the breakdown. So I believe that you're correct about setting expectations. What I don't want you to do is shortchange yourself. And so you will explain in that buyer's agreement what is your value as far as percentages are concerned. Don't shortchange yourself, because with the new policy, remember that with that buyer's agreement, if you say you want one apple and that seller is offering 3 apples, guess what? You're stuck with that one apple, because that document will have to be provided as proof of what you set down with your proposition and what your percentages are. So I'm just cautioning you, don't shortchange yourself in the proposition. If you have to work it out, it's not going to be about the money. It's about the value that you bring for the money. That's really the bottom line.
So I want to build off of that. And I think everybody needs to hear from all of you on this one, because I think that everything that I've heard in the first, 20 minutes of our conversation here has really been about setting appropriate expectations and having expectations that are within your values, number one, but showing your value and some other things like that. So what would be, in your mind, the core expectations that you would need to set in your buyer consult or the buyer intake, like Danny calls it? Go ahead, I'll let you start.
So your core concepts obviously is what you're going to be offering, breaking down what are your responsibilities. I always tell my buyers that the only person that you're married to is that real estate agent, because you're the nucleus that brings in the rest of the parts of this
I thought they were married to me. What are you doing?
Yeah. And so I always tell my buyers, you don't sign a contract with your title company, you don't sign a contract with your lender, you don't sign a contract with anybody else that's involved in this process. And I am going to bring you the best in the business for you to choose. in the end, it is your decision what you want to do with those recommendations, because we also have to be very cautious about who we recommend. But this is how you bring it all together, that you are the nucleus. You are the one that is going to be determining and helping that buyer out in everything they do. We bring so much to the table. So I think those are important, that you have to make it, that this is a long-term relationship, just like he said. It's not that once this it's over. I've got clients call me 3 years after the closing has happened for advice and for asking me for what can I do here. Some of the things I can't answer, they should be talking to the lender. But it's that relationship that you built with that client, and you don't make it about the apples that you're charging. You make it about what is it that you're going to be doing for them.
Mm-hmm. You want who's next? Todd, you got the microphone. It's up to you.
When I'm talking to my buyers, we will talk about what my fee is and what I do for them, and they understand it completely. Most buyers could never get from here's the house I want to moving their furniture in on their own. I mean, we do a lot. That's a lot, and they know that. But my buyers know what I do for them, what my fee is, and I don't present it to them like here's a problem scenario. I approach it with a very positive. I said, here's what my fee is, and what we're going to do is figure out how that we can get you in that house, and you don't have to pay any of this. We're going to ask the seller to pay it. We might be able to, there are other things that we can do. So that's in their head that the deal, they may have to, end up paying some of it. Because, right, you don't want to surprise them. I think one of the things we're doing is we're educating the public. I mean, for so long, so many buyers, at least my experience is, they come in and they think, oh, of course I'm going to work with you because I don't have to pay you. The seller pays me. Well,
yeah, we used to have agents that said that even, right?
Yeah,
That's how we got here.
Yeah, and that is statistically correct, but they need to understand that it won't be that case every time.
I just feel like it's easier now. I feel like it's so much easier. It was horrible before. It's easier now.
I agree.
It is written in the offer, and if you're representing the seller, you go from zero to hero, because and if you're representing the buyer, you set them up, as you guys have all said. So to me, and I was one of the ones that went kicking and dragging in the I'm done with you people. But I feel like I've really learned to be a better agent going through that.
Yeah, I agree. I think this new system is easier, and I'm working with agents that are kicking and screaming still. There's a large brokerage in town that I just got an email yesterday blasting what the buyer agency commission is on a listing they have, and that's not breaking the rules. It might be at some point in the future, but there are still agents. If I have a listing, I'm still getting calls from buyers agents saying, "Oh, how much are you paying?" And so that's I say, well, we're open to it, whatever's in the offer, put in the contract. But I think it's a lot easier this way. It's just a lot cleaner, because we all know how to put seller concessions in an offer. We've been doing it forever. So this is conceptually the same thing. But having that conversation in the beginning, that here's what I'm going to do so that hopefully you don't have to pay any of this, they understand that they're still responsible for it. So if we get that house and they really want it, they may have to, if there's a gap, they may have to pay it. And I've even had the situation where a buyer said, well, I like that house, but I don't want to pay the difference. The seller's not paying it. Let's find another house. And that happens. I mean, it's the buyers are driving this. Is their decision.
So the way I demonstrate that is I say, basically, I'm going to provide you information. You're going to make decisions. I'm going to help you execute on those decisions, right? So what that means is I'm going to give you that information to make that decision. And then whatever decision you make, we're going to work through it. Because really, honestly, telling them every horrible thing that could ever happen in a transaction, they would never buy anything. Because we've seen some stuff. I was going to say, everybody in this room could tell a horror story, right? And the chances of that happening isn't that great. So I don't know that you go over that. You need them to understand that if the compensation isn't paid by the seller, they're responsible for it. You also need them to understand that they will know before it happens, it will not be a surprise, and that they're in control of that, right? I'm going to give them that information. The seller said no. I mean, honestly, I like the way we're doing it. And you guys mentioned the listing side, and I know we're talking more on the buy side, but on the listing side, I really like it because I don't know what you're like. I do tiered listing, and I'm like, I will do this much work for this many apples, right? And I get more than 3 apples. So you can do that if you do the value, right? The value, to John's point, and I love John, by the way, because he always says it better than I do.
In that radio voice.
Yeah, he's got it. He's like, no, no. But again, like if you can show them, I will do this, this, and this, and they are like, oh, I really want that. The price is worth it. They're getting value for that. Because at the end of the day, what does a buyer want? They want to buy a home. They want you to go find homes that they want to buy. What does a seller want? They want us to, find buyers for their home. That's what they want. They don't want us to do TikTok dances. They don't want any of that stuff. No. They at the end of the day, that's not what they want. So if you're showing them the actual things that they value and saying this is what it costs for that, again, I don't have problem getting compensation.
You want to build off that, John, before we move to the next question?
Yeah. Everything you guys said. I think the only thing to put an exclamation mark on is that the thing that is happening with agents in this marketplace and in every marketplace is they're going one of two directions. They're either learning to establish their value as a buyer agent, because that's, like Danny said, that's the root of the whole reason this came up was we went, and Todd said this and Angel said it too, we went literally decades since buyer agency was created in 1991 here in Virginia anyway, or 1993. And we went without establishing the value of the agent. And it was a complex process. And all we just said was, oh yeah, the seller's going to pay it. And when we talked to sellers, we said, oh yeah, you just got to pay this to stay competitive in the market. That's all we said. And we didn't justify value. That's what got us into the mess. Now, if you can justify your value, many of us are charging above market rate because we're like, dang, I am good. I do have something to offer, and it is better than the average agent. So why should I charge the average fee, whatever that is that we don't talk about in this room, right?
So I want to put a little bit of a twist on this from what's happening in the market right now compared to what's coming, okay? Yes. Because right now the interest rates are at 7% and 7.5%. I can talk percentage points, by the way. I know you guys.
That's right.
7%. Whatever the interest rate is, it's higher than it's been in recent memory for a lot of people. And it's a little slower for the listing agents right now, right?
For sure.
Okay. Absolutely. That's going to change. The forecast is not going to be that it's going to stay here. But the conversation is easier because you're not dealing with 6, 7, 10 offers on the same house when that time comes, which may happen again. The forecast is that we're going to be seeing rates in the next 12 to 18 months somewhere in the high 5s, low 6s, depending on who you listen to. There's some people who are doom and gloom going the other way. There's some that are super positive. I'm embracing positivity. So that's a conversation I'm having. Now, when that happens, when we get into a multiple bid situation, explain your strategy there.
Yeah. So Todd said it well. We're problem solvers, right? Like we'll solve the problem. The number one goal that Danny said was we learned this in principles, right? We represent our client's best interest no matter what. Their best interest is to figure out a way to pay our fee because their best interest is to have us as an agent. And so that's still in their best interest. Our fees just, their interest has to come first, right? And our fee can come within that. Those things don't have to be in conflict. And so is it more difficult when there's, let's just use a real world example from the past. There's 25 offers on this house. You think there's going to be one where agency compensation is not in there? It might be. But again, remember these homes are hundreds of thousands of dollars that are there. Your compensation is a very small percentage of that, right? And so I think there's lots of ways to go about that. I think if you feel like you can that just comes into offer negotiation strategy. If you feel like you can put it in, there's one set of solutions to that problem, and if you can't put it in there, there's another set of solutions. And listen, in this crazy market that we came out of, a couple of years ago, we weren't putting anything in there, were we? We were taking inspections out. We were taking like you didn't put closing costs in there. Like that was just a joke. Like as a listing agent, if I saw something with closing costs in it, I'm like, oh, you're not even serious. Like you're not even serious. So in that scenario, if I'm the buyer agent, to get specific to answer your question, Chris, if I'm the buyer agent, my very first question especially when we go into a competitive situation, I'll usually say something like, listen, Mr. or Mrs. Buyer, they'll be like, what do you think? Here's what we think. What do you think of the house? And I'll be like, well, I work with a lot of buyers, and I can tell when they get that look in their eye that this is the one. And I see that look in your eye that this is the one. Am I right about that? And they say, yes, you are. Great. How bad do you want it? Because you might have heard what we've talked about already, and you might have heard outside before we even talked about it, that this is a very competitive market. So here's what it's going to take to get it done. And we talk about the price, we talk about the other terms, and whatever my fee was, remember that. That's something that we're going to have you pay outside of closing. And that's just going to be an additional closing cost on your, do you call it good faith estimate?
Yeah.
Still? Yeah. It's just it's one of your closing costs is my fee. And I can ask the seller to pay for it, but I don't think we're going to get them to pay for that or any of the other of your closing costs. My fee is one of the many closing costs that you have to pay. And so I'm not going to ask for any of the closing costs, including my fee. Here, you remember the good faith estimate. My fee is in there for you to pay it. And so here's your total cash required at closing is X dollars. And do you want the house if you have to pay this for it? And if they say yes, then we go forward and we negotiate that.
I want to emphasize the importance of listing agent and buyer agent. We're a cooperation. So when I have a listing, I also tell my seller the importance of that buyer agent, and what we're not going to be able to close without that buyer agent. So I think it's almost a cooperation, even though independently we represent the buyer if we represent the buyer and the seller if we represent the seller. But as listing agents, it's extremely important. I always say that the other agent on the other side matters when we get a contract, because I've worked with agents on the other side. I'm like, ugh, never again. And then I've worked with agents on the other side, like, my goodness, that person was a superstar. So I think that's where it really all starts. Even if you have multiple offers, your fee or the price of the property is not always the most important, what's offered. We have to make sure that we educate our sellers the importance of the other side. I think that's important, not so much the dollar amount. Some agents won't take it to the finish line. Some agents won't flex. I like that other agent on the other side that wants to work with me and have that beautiful partnership, even though we are a co-op. This is a cooperation right here. So I think that's most important.
So before you go, I want to build off of that. I had a loan fall out in December. We were clear to close, by the way. We were clear to close. It wasn't me. It didn't have anything to do with me. I feel like I have to say that. Father, I have sinned. My sins are many. Anyway, you have that conversation. It fell out, and we were clear to close. And it fell out after clear to close because the agents couldn't come to a place of a mutual agreement on a stupid idiosyncrasy that happened in title. It literally was a $1,000 problem in title that could have been resolved by putting money into escrow and clearing it up afterwards. The buyer got a release because there was no way between the agents to figure out how to negotiate with each other. And this is building off of what you're saying and building off of the conversation that we've had from the beginning, that this is like a crazy conversation because your skills mean a whole lot here when it comes to making both sides of the transaction and you getting paid and paying your mortgage and feeding your family and going whatever else it is that you want to do with the money. It plays a huge role. And so the question I want to ask Todd, building off of what they're saying, is talk to us about the urgency in developing and building these skills, especially as what's coming with the market and the interest rate. Tell us what do you think?
Well, one of the things I always say to my buyers in a competitive situation, which the last few years, well, 2 years, 21, 22, and 23 were crazy. is just like John said. I've said those exact words of, well, how much do you want this house, or how bad do you want it? And one of the things that I do to sort of, bounce off what Angel said is we do have to work with the other agents. And I think we have to do a good job of communicating with each other, because if you're a listing agent and you have 8 offers, I know it's a lot to process. If you have 25 offers, it's almost undoable, but we have to do it. But communicating with the other side, I think, so I have agents that I work with and they're great communicators. I'll call up the listing agent and say, tell me what's important to your seller. Anything I can do that will help me and at the same time help your seller. Let's work together on that. And most agents will help me with that, like how quickly they want to move, or we don't want to have to do anything, or
Some will help you too more than they should.
right, exactly. But these are conversations that we should have with each other, and they should be easy because we're professionals and we're colleagues. But I have had agents that won't answer the phone, or they'll hang up on me. Or say, well, you can't ask me that. I'm like, well, actually I can, and I should, and you should answer, but but anyway, did I sidetrack the question?
A little bit, that's okay. Talk to us about the urgency of learning some of these skills.
Well, like the negotiating skills.
Yeah.
Well, we're not in a hyper competitive market right now. I've got listings and I got buyers, and we're usually getting to a good place. But if everything goes great, like it is going to go, like I'm very optimistic, like Chris. And then you do have a buyer, and all of a sudden you're up against 6 other buyers. Then our buyers need to know in advance, if this is the kind of market that it is, here's the conversations we're going to be having. And, think about it in advance, because when we have 24 hours for you to make that decision, I don't want that to be the first time you're hearing the question. So learning how to have these conversations about what can we give to get, what can we give up to, so I can get you in that house without, sacrificing a safe move. Because I remember the days where, you escalate everything, you waive everything, and that never felt good. But, my buyer said, whatever it takes, I have to have that house. So I hope we don't get back to that. But yeah, I think preparing our buyers to have these conversations about terms when we're competing against other offers is a conversation we need to have in advance.
You want to build off of it?
So going back to the original question, what are we going to do when the market switches? Well, when the market was crazy, we had to have cash to win anyway, right? Like appraisals were out the window. So again, what John said, they're going to have that money, assuming that every single buyer is going to be paying their agent. It's still going to be an even playing field. The other thing that I would encourage is, if that market switches like that and you have a buyer, go find them something off market. Why don't just count on what is easy, right? Like when you find the one that's off market, generally there isn't a bidding war. Now you've really got to negotiate, right? Because you're going to a seller who isn't on market and you're asking them to pay you, possibly. But
Your value proposition, because now you're representing 2 people, not representing them as an agent, but you're doing all the administrative stuff for that person. So.
But again, it goes back to, we have to be realtors. We solve problems. That's what we do.
So let's build off of what you just said, Angel, because I think that's part of the piece that a lot of us are going to have to face as we start looking for our own inventory and doing other things like that. What is the recurring cause, and how is that going to be impacted by recent changes? Because that's playing a big role.
Yeah, so we talked about, there's a lot of, if you guys drive around, you'll see for sale by owner, those FSBOs. And I've done several FSBOs, especially when the market was hot, because people think that they can sell their own property and bang, they got their money, and they end up making less money than they would have made if they would have had a realtor. So if I see a FSBO, a lot of my clients will drive by and don't want that competition, especially if we talked about 21 and 22 and 23. So like, oh, I just drove by this house, and this house is definitely one. I said, do not approach the seller. Let me try to do that and try to work it out with the seller. And it's really about that seller, you giving yourself your value proposition for that seller as well. Why am I worth it for you to pay that fee if I brought you a buyer? And you just break it down for them and you tell them exactly. Now you're not doing dual agent, of course, but you're doing administrative work. There's a lot more. Some of these brokers won't allow you, brokerage firms won't allow you to do dual agency or representing to clients, and for very good reasons. But if you find a FISBO, that person just an independent contractor or whatever, without representation, you're just doing admin work. You're going to represent your client at 100%. So if it happens to be that you're representing one of your clients for a FISBO, then you just have to sell yourself to that seller. So what can you do for them? I brought you the buyer. So I think that's important too.
Mm-hmm.
One of the questions you did ask about gaining knowledge and sharpening your negotiation skills. So there's a lot of classes that are being offered, but I think the most important is tapping into one another. If it's not representing that property that I'm working with, that agent, he's representing a seller, I'll go to somebody who's got 10, 20. Some people have got 3 years experience, just fresh out of school or whatever. They may have more knowledge than you. So I think it's working with one another. I always pick the brains of the talented and the rookies. The rookies have sometimes more up-to-date information than us brokers that have been in the business for a little bit. So especially with social media, I'm more like you. 99% of my business is referrals. I'm fortunate enough to have a good team, and it's gotten us into social media now. But other than that, it's all about referrals. But sharpening each other's skills, seek out the education. Some of the education that RAR offers is free. So that's one way but the most important one is tapping into the experiences around us and talking to one another.
I think part of it, and I'll let John build off of it too, but I think part of it is that you have to know your trade so well inside and out that you know where the loopholes can be to be able to get your adjustments.
You do. You do need to know your trade, and the best way to know your trade is just be out there, man. Like go sell some houses, right? And I know that sounds like 101. Like, of course, John, I'd sell more houses, but like be in the field and then do what Angel said and engage people around you who have more experience than you. And like Angel said, that more experience might be with somebody who's not necessarily been in the business longer than you, right? But they have experience in that neighborhood or whatever. I actually believe that the market was so hot for so long that the majority of real estate agents were in when it was just a race to the top. Whatever you could offer the seller, that actually, and I don't mean to offend anybody, but that doesn't require much skill. I actually think this market requires more skill than that market required. Is, basically how much can you put together, because we got to throw it all, we got to go all in. Every hand, if like you're playing cards, every hand was all in. And here now it's like you legit have to negotiate, right? And so, and it's especially a challenge now because we're on the back side of that peak. And what happens on the back side of that peak? Buyers are looking for what? A deal, right? Sellers are what's that?
Vengeance.
Well, at least a deal. Sellers are still looking at what their neighbor sold for last year. And they're like, I want to stay there. So I actually think now is the time that you have to be the best negotiator, and it's why so many agents are in pain right now.
So I want to build off of that because I've seen so many go to these models where I'm doing X for X, I'm doing X for Y, I'm doing X for Z, touring agreements, TikTok agreements, whatever it might be. You get kind of what I'm saying is, is that a viable
tiered services?
Tiered services.
Yeah, I do more, I get paid more. I do less, I get paid less.
Is that a viable business plan? Should it be embraced? Give us your thoughts on that. And I think everybody should probably participate on that one.
Yeah. So my quick answer is that I don't personally do discount because I think that you get what you pay for. I think that clients understand that, and I think that when I have that conversation and somebody asks for a discount, my very first response is always, I had to decide when I got in this business whether I was going to be cheap or good, and I decided that I'm going to be good because your biggest financial investment is worth it. Right. So that's a little bit different than what you're asking.
Not entirely, but yes.
Yeah. But that's really where the low tier that I'm going to do less, I get paid less. So I choose not to participate in that. I'm going to in the discount part of that. But I do offer tiered services from what most people would consider a market rate and then above market rate. And most of the time I collect more than what most people would consider market rate because I have options to do additional things. mostly on the listing side. I don't do that on the buyer side. The buyer side, I have a fixed fee, which is above market for everybody. So
Wow. Look
you
at that
can,
go.
yeah.
So you're sounding like Chick-fil-A to me.
I think that's a compliment.
Anybody ever had a chicken sandwich at another place other than Chick-fil-A? Which one do you go out of your way for?
As far as the that's concerned, that whether you discount your fee or you're not discounting your fee, first of all, you've got to look at the policy for your brokerage firm. You know, if you discount your fee, your brokerage firm may say you're bringing in the difference, brother or sister. So I would say that it's really how you want your business plan to work out. I think the most important thing, personally, I own my own brokerage firm, and I try to give flexibility to my agents. But I think the most important thing is that, and I know we all have to eat, and I know that we're in this business because this is a job. But I think if you make it less important about money, the more successful you're going to be. That's just my feeling, and that's where I think the difference that our firm has had success is because we try not to make it about money. It's all up to your brokerage firm, and it's all up to your broker and your discussions that you're going to have with them. And I don't belittle anybody that's there and making the money. But back to the talk about back in the day, we were just put in an offer. Back in the day when it's we had so many buyers and so many listings, I always say, just like I've heard this financial expert say, even a monkey can sell real estate. But look at now what's going on. A lot of the listings that you see out there are part-time agents. It's really, really difficult. Some of those listings that are out there, part-time agents, it's difficult to get a hold of that agent and try to work out a deal. The professionals that have stayed in full-time are the ones that are having success. That's the way I see it.
A lot of those deals back during that time fell apart
Yeah.
because people were.
They rushed into it.
They
The
rushed
perception
into
of the public was, I can do this.
I could sell my own
100
house.
deal. So what happened was, so now they're understanding because they know they really thought we were not needed. A lot of them did, and our clients know our value, but I did hear a lot of the perception of the public was, oh my gosh, you just stick a sign in the yard, I got 10 offers.
Yeah.
But the back behind that was a lot of those offers fell apart.
Yeah.
Because inexperience, not understanding appraisal gaps, not understanding strategies and tactics.
Yeah, and we I'm also a broker owner, so I get to set the rules for all of my agents. But I decided a long time ago, like John said, I don't want to be a discount brokerage. It's a decision I made. There are discount brokerages, but we're not one of them. I'd rather people understand my training, my knowledge, and my experience, and my success, and think that, okay, well, then you're absolutely worth it. So we don't really do a lot of, like, once upon a time, people were coming in and say, the MLS only fee. I'll pay you $500. Just put in the MLS. I'll take care of the rest. I'll handle showings. I'll review the offers. I'll do everything. I'm just going to pay you to put it in there. I'll even take the pictures. And then they end up asking you, what do I do here? What do I do? So you're still doing the work.
Yeah.
So you have to say in advance, no, we don't offer that service. Yeah. And then one other thing, which kind of leads back to a question a minute ago, we help people make decisions on the most expensive thing they will ever purchase or sell in most cases. So we are very important. So like everybody, I think, has chimed in, when the market's really hot, I've seen agents come in, they think it's just easy money. Yeah. They do the minimal amount of work, they get their license, they go, sell 3 or 4 houses, really don't have any idea what they're doing. And then the other side figures it out, the lender figures it out, the attorneys figure it out. So again, I'm not trying to step on anybody's toes. I don't think we have any of those people in this room, but we have to take our jobs very seriously, because one wrong thing, I've had this happen last year to an inexperienced agent. I was on the other side, so my job was to protect my client. Unfortunately, it cost the other side a lot of money, and it's just because of a mistake. So we have to take our jobs very seriously.
What was the question again?
I don't know, make it up.
Oh, discount. Well, the discount service model's been around forever, right? And we've watched those guys, when there's plenty of business, it tends to do well. And when there's not a lot of business, they tend to go downhill. I am kind of more on John's side, where especially on the listing side, uh, I will do more than an average agent, but I charge more for it. And a lot of that is, what do you need? Like on the listing side, do you need the house painted and paid for at closing? Do you need someone to deep clean it? So you can charge above the average amount of fruit salad or whatever you want to call it, as long as you're providing services that are representative of that value, right? Because let's be honest, I've told people this, and I really believe this. Without real estate agents, half these houses, probably 90% of these houses don't sell. And not because we do paperwork or negotiate well. It's because, I mean, how many times have you walked into a listing and said, "Oh my God, you haven't done maintenance in like a decade," right? Like really, half these houses get fixed up because we get involved, right? And so we're doing above and beyond. So the idea that you're going to go in and buy the listing, or you know what I mean? Like, I don't believe in that. I also, back to what Angel was saying, when you work by referral, the person who who gave the referral has already told them all the things you're going to do. They've already told them, oh man, when everything hit the fan, like he had an answer, he was there, he figured it out. Because I mean, really honestly, guys, we problem solve. That's what we do. We don't know what those problems are going to be yet, because they're always different. I mean, the day they get it down to a one set of problems, they can do an algorithm. I think we're real safe, just real safe.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of people coming into the market trying to do some of that low cost stuff.
Like the attorney who sued the NAR.
Yeah, that guy. But not just them. I mean, some big players like Rocket has actually got Rocket Homes now, and they're doing things like that. I got a letter in the mail from somebody trying to buy some of my house on sight unseen. So there's stuff like that happens all the time, and we're going to be facing those pressures regardless. The real question is how do we build up the value? And everything I've heard today, so I'm going to summarize real quick because we got a few more minutes before we wrap down. And then if you want to stick around and be a part of a little happy hour or kind of a light refreshment here, we'd love to have that conversation continue informally after this. But I'm going to summarize real quick. Everything that we've talked about today is really about presented value. It's really about drilling down on your value and finding a way to communicate that value. And that's a tough conversation, especially because we haven't had the need to do it a whole lot leading up until recently. And so some of the stuff that you're hearing today has been years fine tuning. Everything that I'm hearing right here has been years in the fine tuning. Some of us don't have that many years in fine tuning, and that's entirely fine. But if you want to outlast this market, you're really going to have to fine tune. Is that what I'm hearing? That's what I'm hearing from you guys. Okay, so as we wrap up, from each one of you, I'd love to hear, what do you see being the most important thing in your business going into 2025 to sustain and to thrive? And you got the microphone, so you're up.
Concentrate on the client experience. Concentrate on the services we provide to our client. Remember what they need, remember what they want, and work towards providing that more smoothly. If the client experience is good, they'll pay extra for the chicken sandwich. Chick-fil-A.
I'm 100% referral. I don't think I've ever advertised, or maybe I did once a long time ago. So making sure your clients understand that you care about them and that you're there for them, and you're adapting to a changing environment. Because if you've been selling real estate long enough, it's almost like a whole different job. I mean, in 2007, 8, and 9, I became a short sale foreclosure specialist. I haven't done a short sale in 15 years. So you have to be able to kind of see the landscape, see where it's going, read the indicators, and be sharp on that, because you want to look good in front of your clients. You also want to take really good care of them.
Okay.
Chris talked about my skill sets as far as what in my heart, and I say that you have to have a heart of a teacher. That includes, if you're a broker sitting here, you should have seminars with your agents. So I think that in order to succeed, that broker is so important in your life. If you're a broker sitting here, you're so important for that firm to succeed. And then when you get a client, it's the same thing. The heart of a teacher. Not every client is going to come to you. Not every buyer that's going to come to you. Not everybody that wants to buy a house is ready to buy a house. I've had it where I have a client that came to me, a buyer, and I said, "Man, you're not ready for this. Your family's not ready for this." And they took all the advice that I gave them in conjunction with the lender, and they came back about a year and a half later, and they were able to purchase a house. So it's about being honest, have the heart of a teacher, and working with one another as agents.
So I've got a pretty boring answer. Yes, heart is important. Yes, skills development is important. But the one common thread among all successful real estate agents is their habits to connect with other people. Every day, how many contacts are you going to make with other people? Now, that may be in your way. Maybe you are doing TikTok or Instagram or a YouTube channel. That's absolutely an incredible habit to develop. But anybody who does that knows that that works over time, right? It's a habit. It's not, I put out one video and like that's going to change my business. I put out videos every week or even every day. And then every day I'm making contacts. I've never met an agent taking home less than 6 figures a year in any broker model. Never met an agent taking home less than 6 figures a year who's talking to 35 people a week about real estate. Ever. There's nobody. And most people can do it with way less than that. Many of you are seasoned pros and you can do it with 15 people a week. Or you can do it with a reel every day. But it's all about contact. And success is boring. But that's where it is in your habits. And it's going to work. It worked in 1985. Well, I wasn't around 1985. It worked in 2005. It worked in 2005, and it'll work in 2025.
So I'll share a quick statistic about that. This is at least applies to the mortgage world, and I'm sure there is correlating factors that go into that. Barry Habib shared this last weekend when I was at his conference, that the social media, if you're doubling down on social media, it provides you in the mortgage industry with 0.05% return on investment. Your phone, on the other hand, returns 40% return on investment. And so his main point with it is you can be as good as you want on TikTok, but you're never going to outweigh the value of getting on the phone. So, and I think that's kind of what you're saying there. Before we get into the closing piece right here, are there any questions? Any of you want to role play with any of them as far as the conversation that we've had right now?
I have one question. If it doesn't infringe on any of your personal trade secrets, what are you guys doing? Are you willing to share what are you doing that differentiates you in establishing your value so that you get to the point that you're getting a response like Danny from your clients?
Go ahead, Todd. You got it.
Well, yeah, and I can answer that, and this sort of ties back into the last question. We are kind of unique here. And this also will explain why you're seeing what you're seeing. We certainly don't need 5,000 square feet to be a real estate office. But my partner, Ezzy, who did all the food over there, and she manages the showroom and the retail, we decided to be a community center. So we work with all these nonprofits. We have art openings every month. We bring sometimes 300-400 people a month through here for other events. And of course, we're always here. We always have some sign or whatever, so they know what we do. That's a very unique approach, and that's what works for us. But getting yourself out there, because people will like you, people will work with you or not work with you generally based on person, price, or product. Well, the product is the product, and we don't have a lot of control of the price. So the person is very important. So being a likable person, having them think that you stand for something, and having them believe in you and trust you and think that you really are, not seeing a dollar sign over their head. So if somebody's buying a $100,000 condo or $1 million house, they get the same treatment from you. So I think that's very important to have that reputation. And one last thing real quick. I just wanted to invite everybody. Everything you see in here is for sale, and we offer steep discounts to realtors. So if you have clients that renovate or want to buy cabinetry, countertop, whatever, talk to this young lady over here, because this is something we do for the realtor community. It'll be less expensive than you'll get at Lowe's, Home Depot, or anywhere else in town. That's my plug.
Thanks for having us today.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you. I create community. That's what I do. I stay with them beyond the sale. I make those phone calls, and I'm not really discussing real estate as much as I am asking them how they're doing, like what's going on. I do a referral contractor list that I publish every year for my clients, and I tell them, call me before you call the contractor, because then they have to answer to me and you, right? So it's again, I know we've said it 400 times, but providing value, proving that you actually do care about them and that you're going to be there beyond that sale, and then proving it, like doing what you say you're going to do. If you do that over time and you stay in touch with them, they're going to come back, and they're going to, that they're, because that's the other thing. If you're buying leads, and I don't knock that because that's a model and it works for some people, they have to answer the call within 4 seconds, right? To get that Zillow lead or whatever. Like, I have a following where they'll wait for me because I provide that value, and that's how you're able to do the volume you're able to do without as much leverage.
So my question, I guess, if I can narrow it down.
Sure.
to that, since that buyer consultation has become increasingly important,
It was always important, but
yeah, more so even now, because
Sure.
in the beginning when Chris talked about, but one of you guys shared an example, so many people now are trying to do this business, and that you have to differentiate. When you get an opportunity to sit in front of someone, is it during that time that you're conveying these things? There's got to be something else that's going on as well.
So it started with the conversation of how they found us, right? So their best friend said, hey, you want to work with Danny, I worked with Danny, and this is the results we got, right? And then they communicate a certain portrayal of you, and then they meet you, and you are that. That speaks volume, right? Like, they're looking. So we're literally, and William Bowles quoted this, who is Cynthia and I's original broker. People are swimming in information and starving for wisdom, right? Like, they can go on Google or the internet and find any piece of information they want. Half the time when they bring us that information back, you're like, oh, that's true in California, though, right? That real estate law article that you brought me has nothing. My favorite is also, and I'm on a tangent now, my uncle's an attorney, in New Jersey, and he studies estate law, and this is real estate, so that's different in itself, right? Like, but again, you are going to be authentic, you're going to be consistent, and you're going, and by being that, you're gonna stand out, right? Because one of the things I tell my clients, because I'm not the highest tech guy, when you call me, I'm going to answer the phone, and I'm going to have an answer, or maybe if I can't answer the phone, I'm going to call you back. Like, but that goes back to, like, caring, right? And then as we grow your business, because it's definitely eye-opening as you get so many clients that you're like, man, I can't talk to you the hour on my drive home anymore because I have to hit 5 of you, and I'd like to see my wife at some point. Then you're kind of setting those boundaries, but you're setting up systems and expectations that allow you to do that, right? That's really what it is. And then again, back to what John said, you gotta pick up that phone, and you've got to be in touch with them. You have to be consistent, because if you're consistent in your marketing, you're going to be consistent when there's money on the line, right? Like, we do our client events. My clients have been going to those events for years. They call me and they're like, I know what's coming up. Like, my smoke detector batteries are coming. You know what I mean? And they're right. We did change the tag this year, and I think this is funny. It says, because if it burns down, we can't sell it. I thought that was hilarious.
That is good. I want to build off what you're saying before you answer. Some of this is really about the trial and error cycle, and you're not gonna succeed without the trial and error cycle. And the trial and error cycle is really simple. You try, you fail, you reflect, you correct, and you re-enter. And if you can get that cycle to work, I'm telling you that you'll be sitting here at the next panel. So.
Well, there's nothing like experience, right? The wisdom that comes from being in the business for a long time. You can learn so many different things. However, I think the most important thing is not coming across desperate. I always bring it when people come see me as buyers or listing agents. I say to them, You will not have to sign any documents because I might not be the right fit for you. You might not be the right fit for me. So this is a relationship. Go ahead and consider it. And I've had maybe one or two times where they've walked away and said, okay, I'll come back, and probably never called me because we weren't the right fit. However, it's coming across desperate. How many folks here say, oh, I remember that agency that sold me that property? It was Long and Foster or Keller Williams or whatever. Nobody ever remembers agencies. They remember you. And if you can get them to remember you, who cares what agency you work for? Because it's really about your relationship with that client.
And if they don't remember you, that's a problem.
That's a problem because you're never going to get a referral. Or if they remember you for the wrong things, they'll say, don't ever use that firm because they may remember the firm then.
We've all had a few of those.
Yeah, just not a lot to add there. Just habits, again, of making connections. John Maxwell wrote a book called Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. Everyone communicates, few connect. We got noise all over the place. Danny talked about swimming in information, starving for wisdom. When you connect, then people will look to you for your competency. You'll develop your competency the more that you connect with people. So just go connect with a whole lot of people, and you'll develop the rest.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up. We're right on time here. And so I just wanted to share just a couple things as we finalize this. Thanks panelists for coming out and sharing your wisdom, your expertise. It's great to have you here. And this is exactly what we're trying to do here is we're trying to serve others and have a willingness to grow together. And I want to finish this up by just talking, because this is where we get into the application portion. And the application portion is actually a little tough sometimes. And so I'm going to share with you just a couple things that really have helped me in this, because anytime you get into a position where you need to transform yourself a little bit, there's a couple word pictures that I just shared with us. And they're not original with me, by the way. So if you go and look these up, you'll find them. John Maxwell shared these, and I think that they're fantastic. But he shares 6 pictures of transformation and word pictures. And the first one is the mirror. You guys know what the mirror is? It starts with me. Is if I want to make these changes, I want to get to this level of success, it totally starts with me. I have to see the blemishes of what I have. I have to see the shortcomings. I have to see my strengths, and I have to operate within my strengths. The second one is kind of like joining hands, because it takes a community, it takes a village to pull this off. That's why these guys are up here right now, is because they really want to join hands. They really want to partner. They really want to make a difference. They're really trying to make things happen, and they want to find people of like mind. Same thing I'm trying to do, trying to find people of like mind who can make a difference in the community. The third one is the ladder. Is sometimes you're climbing the ladder, but sometimes you're holding the ladder. And sometimes right now is a case where these guys are holding the ladder. They're trying to get everybody up to the same level. Same thing I'm doing. I'm trying to hold the ladder to help you guys get to that level too. You're going to find yourself at some point in time that you're going to have to be climbing that ladder, but at some point in time, you're going to be holding the ladder for others and helping them get along in this space. Because this is fairly new. This conversation is, 7-8 months old, and we haven't quite mastered it yet. And so this is one of the ones that we really need to do. The next picture is a picture of a heart, because if you really, really, really want to serve, it's going to come out. And you can see these guys really here want to serve, and they're really trying to be the guys that are holding the ladder and serving at a very high level. And this is where value resides. This is value within us and the value that we can share with the community. And when the community sees that, they're going to see that they've been talking about value all morning. All afternoon, been talking about value. And that's the same values that we need to be sharing with the community around us, and that's really huge. And then the next value, or the next transformational piece, is that table. Small tables, small conversations. We had 42 people that RSVP'd for today. You can see we have about 19 in here right now. That's fantastic. It doesn't matter how many people. It's about the conversations that happen so that we can transform within ourselves and then share that transformation with others. And then the last one is really the bridge. A bridge is designed really to help us get somewhere that we cannot get on our own. We just can't do it. That's why we do these things. I have one coming up. You'll see this QR code sitting. I can't even pick it up right now. See the QR code on the table. This is an Ask the Underwriter that's coming up that I'm sponsoring at another office, at another location. Love to have you come if you want to. These guys are doing events all the time. It's worth your time to catch up with them, because the bridge is there. The guys are willing to help, and it's a fantastic way to do that. So as we go in we finish up today and we have the conversation over the light refreshment that Aziz provided for us. Just know that everybody here, we're trying to be the steady hand. We're trying to be your partners in this success. And so we just want you to join us in that. So thank you so much for coming. It's been an honor to be a part of your day. And yeah, stick around. Thank you so much. Thanks, Todd, for having us here. Did you want to say something? No? Okay. All right.
I got to start with the mic.